Hi, everyone. Thank you, Asha, for those words. So I'm very glad and very delighted to have a special guest today, His Excellency Ambassador Jawed Ashraf, Ambassador of India in France. That's the first for us in the VivaTech tour dedicated to India today. So I'm very, very glad to have you with us today, Mr. Ashraf.
Well, thank you, Vincent. That's a great pleasure to be on this platform, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency. So we are very keen to know a little bit further about India in terms of tech and about the Indian and French relationship when it looks to tech, startup, and innovation. So my first question, Mr. Ambassador, will be what do you see as the major trends in the tech Indian ecosystem, which is now well recognized in France and in Europe as booming?
Well, that's a very good question. Of course, all of us are aware, and the world recognizes the fact that India has been, in some sense, the force behind the IT revolution that has taken place in the world over the past 3-4 decades, and that the IT companies from India have been powering the digital transformation across the world. But what I find very exciting is the sort of trends I've been seeing in the past 5 to 6 years. Maybe it started a decade ago, but really it's picked up momentum in the last 5 to 6 years. One, of course, is the fact that there has been an absolute phenomenal transformation in the use of IT as an instrument of governance and public policy. I mean, maybe in that respect, we may have been the pioneers and trendsetters in the world, and we can discuss that in a little bit more detail later because it opens up great opportunities even for the startups. The second area, of course, is what the big companies have been doing. Now, from being simply IT service providers, they've become major investors in artificial intelligence, machine learning, in cloud platforms, in cybersecurity, and empowering the transition into the world of automation, in connected systems, in Internet of Things. And you see a really large investments taking place in India in that area, not just for India, but also for the rest of the world. This is a very important development because this really marks the transition. The phase we are going through at this moment globally is the big transition that is taking place from a simple IT systems complete transformation. The next area, which is, I think, perhaps the most exciting and from your point of view relevant, is what's happening in the realm of startups. And now India is considered the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Every kid in India wants to be a startup king. The best engineering institutes, which used to send students, about 80% of them would go to the United States. Now, more than half of them simply stay back and say, I'm going to do a startup. The startup and innovation is really picking up. We're the third largest ecosystem. As you know, last year, we already had more than 40,000 government recognized startups in India, and which is growing at a double-digit rate. And we had about 42 unicorns in India, out of which, remarkably, 12 of them came into this league only in 2020 when the world had actually shut down due to the crisis. But if you go by the Credit Suisse assessment, we have more than 100 unicorns in India. So I think in whichever field you look, the startups is really an exciting area in India. And again, something which we can talk about down the line, because there's some very important steps that have been taken to promote it. And the fourth, of course, is area relating to security. Now, cyber security is an area where it's almost hard to keep pace with the challenges companies world are facing. And you need a really large pool of trusted and skilled cybersecurity professionals. And again, that is an area where I find we are doing extremely well. More and more global corporates are turning to India for cybersecurity solutions. And as you know that, the way we are witnessing the penetration of cyber systems into every aspect of our lives, economy, governance, cybersecurity is going to be the cutting edge of national security for every country. And there's again an area where India's trust and skill, combining it to make it into a global leader. So I'd say, these are the broad baskets, as I'd say. One is what is happening in the realm of public policy and use of IT and digital technology for transforming lives. The second is what the big companies are doing. The third is, as I said, this absolutely magnificent startup ecosystem. And finally, in the realm of security.
Very precise, and thank you so much for those insights regarding the tech Indian ecosystem. You already mentioned that, Your Excellency, but maybe can you say a few more words about the key success factors of this tech ecosystem over the last 10 years?
So one of the first things, and particularly since the new government came in 2014, has been this phenomenal expansion of public platforms and infrastructure. Now, here's the big story. We've got 1.2 billion people who have biometric-based digital identification, Aadhaar, as you know. It's really a trendsetter globally. And that has become a platform on which we have had almost limitless applications. So Aadhaar is one. Then you have this other platform called Unified Payment Interface, which is perhaps the world's most comprehensive digital payment infrastructure, which links 134 banks in India. And it's highly secure. You can use, your telephone numbers, which is linked to your bank accounts, to make transactions which are instantaneous. So this payment infrastructure is the third. Here's the other very exciting one. 600,000 villages in India, 600,000 villages are getting connected with fiber optic network. And then 250,000 village councils have what is called the common service centers, which would provide a whole range of digital services. So it's really taking digital platforms and services to the remotest parts of a very large country of 1.3 billion people in India. Then I'd say that what the government is doing in terms of using IT for delivery of public services and governance, for example, we have been able to link. We've opened about 450 million new bank accounts in order to promote financial inclusion. And by linking these 1.2 billion biometrics with over a billion phones, we have been able to now open more than billion accounts. 870 million already are linked to this biometric, 870 million bank accounts. And it might be of interest for you to note that 55% of the new bank accounts have been opened for women. I mean, that's also an instrument of empowerment. You've got digi-lockers, you've got 3.65 billion, 3.6 billion documents which are now on the digi-locker, just seamless effort at processing and things. Here's something else. Now, Umang is a app on the phone. Umang is an Indian word, but it's an acronym for government services. 340 government services are on a single app. It's just any service you need is just a phone away. So when I look at what we are doing on inclusion and payments, what we are doing in delivery of services now, for example, because we have been able to link these bank accounts to biometrics, we have been able to do 70 billion euros of direct transfer of welfare benefits to the beneficiaries, saved about 12 billion euros on inefficiency and duplication and leakages. Today, pension, insurance, scholarship, wages, everything is being transacted on this. Now, the government has also set up a government marketplace. It is called GEM. And it's really a gem, because what we have done is there are millions of small-scale industries and government buyers who are connected through this government marketplace. Similarly, we have created a national agriculture market. So we've had a very, very disaggregated, fragmented marketplaces for agriculture. We have now started linking all these marketplaces into a common network. This is how the government is using this too. Now, one very interesting thing is that we've launched the world's largest affordable healthcare program, insurance program of 500 million people. And that's only possible because we've been able to do this using this digital network. So government services, inclusion, digitization of payment, welfare benefits, all this is happening because of the initiatives the government has taken place. The second factor in this is what is happening in the private domain. So internet penetration is now very high in India. You've got 750 million internet users. We have nearly now 700 million smartphone users. Largest number of social media users, instant messengers number 2. Largest, second largest downloaders of apps. Now, 12 billion apps were downloaded in 2018. I mean, this is the kind of things that's happening in the private domain. Now, what's very interesting over here is that data consumption in India is at 8.8 gigabytes per user per month, which matches that of South Korea and is higher than in China. And it is now the cheapest data in the world. So in the private sector is also the same. What the government is doing in terms of instrument of public policy, you see the spread of smartphones and internet usage, social media accounts, etc. We're the largest user of WhatsApp, Facebook, and so on and so forth. E-commerce has gone up from 40 million users in 2013 to 200 million now. I mean, that's what is happening in the e-commerce space. So that's the second part. The third, of course, is that we have made a pretty smart ecosystem now, which is very liberal tax regime, a tremendous support for startups. I mean, for the startups, you've got 3 years of tax-free, whether it's on your profit or on capital gains, or if the investment is above fair value. I mean, that's again something which is a very important thing in the realm of startups, because some investors just have a great instinct and they don't want tax authorities to come and say, why have you inflated the value? I mean, so these are the kind, so our tax regime is taking into account what is the startup need and the impulses. So, if the startup starts and 3 years later wants to sell 40% of its share, you don't want to go and slam it with capital gains tax. And you can remain a startup for 10 years. I mean, that's a pretty long margin, and you have a pretty high, threshold of revenue for being called a startup. So we've got also a massive range of funds of funds by the government. We have seed capital, and we've got a lot of government-supported banks and financial institutions permitted to invest in alternative investment funds. So you've got the tax regime, you've got massive sources of funding being channelized either through government setting up its own fund of funds or enabling. And then we've enabling, banks and others to do it. But then what's interesting is that we're also creating a network. If you go to the Startup India page, Startup India, which is a big scheme, as everybody knows, you will see, you can find hundreds of incubators, accelerators, mentors, enablers, investors, and government agencies that's looking for it. Then we are making a special provision to give preference to startups in public procurement. That's a big deal because you want to assure them of a market, and that they are able to do when we have that kind of a system. And finally, of course, country has a growing population. We're growing rapidly urbanizing, and a very young population. I mean, if you see, majority of India is under 30. These are people who were born with laptops and cell phones in their hands. I mean, before they learn to eat. For them, it's very natural to get into this area. So India's demography, India's population size, and India's economic growth and prosperity are creating a natural enabling environment for very rapid digitalization to take place. So again, and as this is well known, we've got almost a perfectly elastic supply of engineering talent and skills. So that's something you can never be short on. And I can tell you that government of India is also looking into the future. So we've started a national strategy for artificial intelligence. We have a national strategy for blockchain. And we have launched an AI, responsible AI for youth, which is to prepare the youth for the world of AI. And here's something that will be particularly striking and an example for others. We've started a thing called Atal Innovation Mission. That is to set up tinkering labs in thousands of schools in India, particularly those that are not elite private schools, but public schools. Now, what happens is you've got kids who are young, who are already working with 3D printers, robotics, and things. And I have personally, when I was in Singapore before, brought in startups who were still in school because they have been able to use the Atal Tinkering Labs to use their imagination and do these wonderful things. So this is, a combination of very strong public policy, infrastructure development, liberal funding, procurement, and tax regime, combined with what's happening autonomously in the private sector, and how the big companies are supporting the startups in India and the funding that is taking place. I mean, last year we raised 10.4 billion in startups, which, despite being a year of great crisis, was a huge increase. And in fintech, we were even bigger than China last year.
Very interesting and very insightful as well. You mentioned very many examples, and it's very agnostic in terms of sector. So it's really, really interesting and brilliant for us. So, well, my transition is very simple to my last question, Mr. Ambassador. You mentioned many sectors, you mentioned many initiatives. Here at VivaTech, we are very keen to develop and strengthen our links with VCs, as you mentioned, with corporates, also with ecosystems, also with accelerators. What is your perspective on this? You're the ambassador of India in France. How do you see those links to be strengthened in the next few years?
Let me be very candid and say, first of all, that as far as I'm concerned, digital partnership is a very top priority for me. I think it's an exciting area to connect our economies and to create a better future for our younger people, whether it's jobs or it's entrepreneurship and prosperity. In my last posting, when I was there in Singapore, this was an area of great priority in which we achieved great success. And we wish to continue doing that over here. Now, France already has a presence in India. In India, you've got 115 Indian companies in France, and you have companies like Atos in supercomputing and Capgemini in IT services and solutions, which are already present. But I think in the area of startups, innovation, venture capital funding, accelerator, incubators, we're still very unfamiliar with each other. I do believe that in France, there isn't as much awareness of the opportunities that exist in India. And I'd say that even in India, we're too locked into the Anglo-Saxon world. We think of US, UK, Singapore, etc. But I'm really impressed also with what France has to offer, and through France, Europe. But France has an absolutely outstanding talent pool, great companies doing brilliant work. Now, leader in raising venture capital funding here, and government, like in India, is putting a lot of bet on the digital side of it. So I think it is really a great opportunity for us to work together. VivaTech, I must say, I'm really impressed with the scale, the size, and the quality of VivaTech. In 5 years since it's been launched, it's really become an extraordinary platform from what I've seen of participation in the last few years. But I'm actually disappointed that India had almost no presence there. And then the last time you had about 2 companies participating in this, which it does neither India nor VivaTech nor France proud. We need to connect, and VivaTech is a great platform, I think, for us to be able to bring together the exciting new world of startups and innovators together. I mean, I was at Station F recently, very impressed with what I saw. I was in Angers very recently, and again, I saw what the vision, what the creativity is over here. So we'd like to work with VivaTech, and as I told you, we will try to enhance our participation. at the level of policymakers and thought leaders, at the big companies and those who are driving this digital revolution in India, and also get in startups as exhibitors and things. I mean, in Singapore, I used to regularly get about 100 to 150 Indian startups to Singapore. And we were the largest participant in the Singapore Fintech Festival as a country, more than even the US and China. So it's really something which we should do, because I also want Indian companies to recognize that there is alternatives to, and that France is a great gateway to Europe, to Africa, even to the rest of the world, and that there are enormous opportunities to tap into capital, collaborations, great startups here, great incubators and big companies. So let's work together with VivaTech. We are also thinking, as I think we've conveyed to you, of starting a bilateral platform, which we are planning to call Infinity, India, France, Innovation in Information Technology. And it is to symbolize that there are infinite possibilities of India and France working together in this space and defining the future for the world, because the leadership in the digital space is going to define leadership in the century. It will also define power, competitiveness, and prosperity. So here's an opportunity for two countries, great strategic partners, tremendous mutual trust, to get our ecosystems really deeply connected. So we look forward to VivaTech also supporting and being involved with our venture of Infinity, either as an adjunct to the VivaTech or to do it separately in some form, working together with others here. And we are in touch with the government. So I think, and we'd like you to take part in some of the startup events in India. There are massive grand challenges. There are big digital events in India. And we'd like France to be a country of honor, just as we would like you to, I think one great way would be India celebrating 75 years of independence next year. It would be a huge opportunity to enhance VivaTech's visibility in India. If we'd say, let's call India the country of honor or a special country in 2022 to mark 75 years of independence of India, but also the enormous strategic partnership that we have. And we could perhaps even announce it, we might soon have a bilateral summit between the Prime Minister and President Macron. And we can use this to put VivaTech also in the discourse of the leadership.
Exactly. Brilliant, Mr. Ambassador. And yes, the agenda is definitely very interesting. We are definitely aligned. As you know, this VivaTech tour for the first time dedicated to India with your presence as a special guest is definitely to do that, to strengthen our links. It was my pleasure, Mr. Ambassador, to have you today, to give all those market insights and to do this keynote and also interview that was really, really insightful for all our audience. I want to thank you on the behalf of VivaTech. And as you said, Mr. Ambassador, I hope that we will definitely see you at VivaTech next June in Paris.
We certainly will. And thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here on this platform and look forward to VivaTech in June. And thank you for doing this as a special country tour as part of the build up to VivaTech, and look forward to working with you together. As you can see, this is an area of great interest for me and for my team here in the embassy.
Thank you so much. I was with Jawed Ashraf, Ambassador of India in France, and I give the floor back to Asha Simput for the rest of the broadcast. Thank you very much again.